All right, in this, our final installment of the preview, the Atlanta Showdown, the kickoff special between Florida State and Alabama. I'm joined by Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com to my left, Ira Schoffel, Warchant.com to my right. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. All right, we compare the two coaches now. They're fast friends, and Jimbo Fisher worked for Nick Saban. Obviously, Saban has 5 national titles, 4 at Alabama. Jimbo Fisher has won a title now out on his own as the head coach at Florida State, and he also as the offensive coordinator for Nick Saban at LSU. Two great coaches in the college game, arguably the best of all time in Nick Saban, and one who would certainly like to be, and the way you get there is to win games like this. I guess let's compare the two coaches and talk about their accomplishments. What makes Nick Saban, in the short time you've been at Alabama, so great?
I think organization, number one. I mean, he is so focused on the little things, and that's going to end up, in the big picture items. I mean, also recruiting. I've never seen somebody more focused on recruiting and getting his players to trust in the process. That's something that they talk about a lot at Alabama, is trust in the process. You get a 5-star in as a freshman, you get him to sit, wait his turn, and eventually get his opportunity in a big stage like this. You're talking 22 first-round draft picks since 2007, I believe, which is quite incredible. And I mean, just being around him and the organization, the focus and the drive of wanting to win, wanting to be the best. And though he has these national championships, he even has a statue already erected outside Bryant-Denny. Yeah. And, but that hasn't stopped him. He's still hungry. And I mean, it's just been quite incredible to be around his presence.
Organization, process, these are the things that they describe Jimbo Fisher, who obviously learned an awful lot from Nick Saban. Well.
Yeah, I think you'd probably have to say that Nick Saban's the best coach in college football history. I mean, I think the hardware obviously is there, and then also just kind of what he's done and the way he's been able to do attack his job in many different ways. I mean, he's a trendsetter, which you'd say he was the first guy I think he's given credit for bringing that NFL-style organization, as you mentioned, to the college game. I mean, he doesn't call his team a program or a team. He calls it an organization, and it's run like an organization. And this larger support staff and all the specialized roles and player development, all those things you see trickling down from the NFL. But he's also a guy that can adapt, and I think that's very impressive. There are certain people who can blaze a trail, but they can't necessarily adapt. I think Steve Spurrier maybe didn't adapt as well in his later years, but I think Nick Saban has the no-huddle, adapting to that and adjusting to that and realizing, I hate it. It's not what I want college football to be, but I've got to join it and to be good. I think Nick Saban's one of those guys. A lot of college football coaches are great coaches. That's what they are. Nick Saban, if he never found football, I think would have been a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I think you have to give him the nod as the best ever.
That speaks to the organization that you're talking about. And I think all three of us would say, I don't want to speak for you, Kyle, that in all likelihood we'll look back at Nick Saban as the greatest college football coach at all time, at least in our lifetime, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his resume speaks for itself, but just the way he carries himself and the way that he gets players to buy into this organization has been quite incredible. And, going into this season, he's certainly determined to win another national championship and probably many more. I mean, as you know, he just signed a big extension, and which everybody in Tuscaloosa was really excited about. And what he's done at Alabama has really propelled him, I think, as well, to be the greatest college football coach.
I think it's interesting as we segue over to Jimbo Fisher, kind of a protege of Nick Saban, and a guy who won a national championship with Nick Saban at LSU and put up huge offensive numbers when he was the OC for LSU. And he's coming to Florida State, and he started out as head coach in waiting, and that was tenuous. It's a tough position to be in, but I do think it gave him sort of a head start in his ability to get into recruiting. He, too, is a great recruiter, very organized, very demanding, and has been very successful. Your thoughts on Jimbo Fisher, the head coach?
Yeah, I think they are very similar. And, a lot of times, and Jimbo likes to give Bobby Bowden a lot of credit for being his mentor and also Nick Saban. I think you see day-to-day more influence from Nick Saban than you do Bobby Bowden. I think Jimbo, some of the colloquialism, some of the Southern charm, things like that, he'll break out that are Bowden-esque at times. But for the most part, I think when it comes to running a program, it's kind of what Nick Saban does, and it's between being process-oriented and using terms like organization and process, and then also just the way he's focused on player development and pushing for resources. And we all talk about the arms race in college football, and we think it's about shiny toys and pretty buildings, but that's not really what it's about. It's about player development. And I think what Nick Saban realized, Urban Meyer realized, and Jimbo Fisher realizes is you're not going to have players in your system for 3 or 4 years anymore, 4 or 5 years before they can play. They have to be able to play right away when you get a Jerry Jeudy or those kinds of guys. They have to play right away. So the player development is paramount. That's why they've gone to those bigger staffs. And everything that you see Nick Saban doing, you see Jimbo Fisher doing the same thing. Not necessarily because he's copying him, but that's what those elite coaches are doing.
Because it works.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. All right, so we get to the point now where we got to decide who wins this big-time matchup. I know the fans are always most excited about the predictions. They're pretty tough to do this far out, but at the same time, we know these are 2 top 5 teams, and it's going to be the matchup with College Game Day there on site in Atlanta that's built to throughout the day. It's a great college football weekend and really culminating in this game. Who do we like in the game? If you have to predict it right now, and you do, Kyle, let's go with Alabama. What do you got between Alabama and Florida State here?
Well, I mean, I'll be blunt. You know, I like Alabama, and I like Alabama big. I watch both spring games, and I know you cannot predict off the spring games. But looking at personnel, I do like Alabama on both phases of the game, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be tremendously hard for Florida State to accumulate points through 4 quarters against Alabama's superior defense, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Alabama controls this game by running the football and by coming up with a couple key turnovers. Alabama wins 35-17. Bank it from Kyle Henderson.
Wow. I wasn't even going to ask for a score, just a victory.
You got it.
But he went straight in for the score. He's got him winning big. Do you see it the same way, or do you say, hold on?
I think Kyle's going to be really popular on the Warchant message boards. I'm excited to see the response to that. I think Florida State's could end up being a better team over the course of the season. I don't think they are in the first week. I think I would give Alabama the edge in this game for 2 reasons. Number one, that offense is really being rebuilt. I mean, people I think are glossing over some of those losses. But they're just substantial. Fullback, wide receiver, left tackle.
And you may have a new center.
I mean, it's a lot to overcome in week 1 against a coach who has just, whatever the code is to being great in week 1, Nick Saban has cracked that code.
Southern Cal amongst others.
And so I just think, but I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as Kyle thinks.
It was 52-6 was the Southern Cal game. Florida State's somewhere in between all of this?
I think Florida State's going to hang with them. I'm going to say because of that defense. I think the defense is going to play really well. I think there's a little bit of the mystique of Jalen Hurts has been exposed a little bit late last season. I'll see if they adjust what they do to get him off in the passing game, because late last season it looked like he lost confidence completely in passing the football. This is week 1. He hasn't had a chance to rebuild it yet, no matter what they did in that spring game, which was ridiculous. But I think Florida State is going to hang with them. I think it's going to be 27-24 Alabama.
Oh, we got us a barn burner here. Well, I think just for the sake of college football fans everywhere, the idea would be that it would be a lot more fun to watch your score prediction than yours. Doesn't make it so. It'd just be a lot more fun, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity down the line to bring you more presentations like this. Thanks so much for watching this series, and until we meet again, take care, everybody.